Welcome to the Chad Carden Podcast, where people and culture make all the difference. Our guests are real leaders that are making real impact by creating even better cultures and even better results. We're going to talk about things that most people aren't talking about. We're going to talk about things that leaders are thinking but might be scared to say. We're going to get into issues that can give you practical and tactical ways to set you up for a higher probability of success. Let's get after it. Hey, everybody. I am excited about this one. I'm excited about all my guests, but I'm really excited about this one. Today we have Anne Precythe, and Anne and I have known each other, for almost a decade now. And there's really a couple things that I think hopefully will show up today in my conversation with Anne. Is number one, her knowing what she wants and really going after it. She's one that really bucks the curve, and I'm hoping some of that stuff shows up. But also number two, being persistent. She's ran into, and she'll talk about this, she's ran into a lot of headwinds in her career trying to do some things, but she never left what she thought to be true. And so I'm excited to have Anne on the podcast today and just hear from her. And obviously the whole goal every time is just to capture some information that can hopefully help you as a leader or just you as a person on how you set yourself up for a higher probability of success. So, Anne, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chad. I'm glad to be here. Good to see you.
Yeah, great seeing you. Why don't you just start? Let's just start here. Give the audience a little bit about Anne, kind of your journey, where you started, what you're doing right now, and then we'll just kind of take it from there.
Great. So I started as a probation parole officer in a rural county in eastern North Carolina, hence the accent, and worked my way up through the policy section, ended up being director for the Division of Community Corrections for 4 years, and then was found by the governor-elect in Missouri and ended up coming to Missouri and was the director of corrections for 7 years and loved every minute of it. I miss it today. And now I stepped away in December of 23 and now have a consulting company. So I'm all about helping match good businesses and tools in the corrections space with leaders of corrections departments.
Yeah. Have you always been in the correction space?
I have. For 1 year, I worked with mental health when I first got married, but I knew I wanted to get on with the state, and really, I enjoyed what I saw in probation and parole. And, it's such a misunderstood business today. And that's one of the things I love to tell people about.
Yeah. Well, say more about that. How is it because again, I think corrections you're right. It's a mystic kind of unknown. Most people I only knew until I got into that space, what you see in movies or what you think is true, what you hear in the news. And, I agree with you, but double click on that. Tell us a little bit more about how it's kind of that way.
Yeah. And it's a hard topic to talk about because when people think about corrections, they automatically think about the worst of the worst, and that's the way most everybody in the system is. And then there are always victims, so it's a counterbalance that you have to walk. But overwhelmingly, the majority of the people involved in the corrections system have made bad choices for one reason or another, but 95% of people in prison are coming back to our communities. So when you look at corrections, the goal for us is we have them longer than anybody else. So our responsibility is to help them become the citizens that we all want to live with.
Recidivism, which most people probably don't know what that is, but I mean that you're trying to reduce recidivism and getting people coming back, which it is interesting. I think our biggest connection, which I want to dive into and just here for a second, is just the insane belief. Through my career, I've just had an insane belief that culture and people can really drive the outcomes that you want to drive. And when we connected and you came into the situation you came into in Missouri, it wasn't the best. And that you needed to change the culture to set a foundation to really elevate and get the results that you were asked to get as the director here in the state, and changing that department around. So where did I don't know if we've ever really talked about this, but where did that belief come from you? Where did you begin to understand in your career that people really are the X factor, and if we can get people working together and build a good culture, it will lead to, the byproduct is, results that we want to get?
That's a great question. And I can honestly tell you, I'll just be honest, that really occurred to me 30 years into my career. I retired with 30 years from the state of North Carolina. And I knew focusing on staff was important when I was in North Carolina, but I don't think I truly understood it until you and I met. So I can use this podcast as a perfect example. Think about, just the listener, just think about when you heard us talk about corrections, the first thing you thought about. It's about the people who commit the crimes, not about the people who are working in the system.
Yeah.
And that's what I think you really helped me focus on, Chad, was that take all your preconceived notions out of corrections and just think about the people doing the work. And when you really think about the people doing the work, that's when your focus becomes totally about making things better.
Yeah.
And controlling what you can control.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting when we met. Most of my portfolio was in the private sector. We did very little public work in government space, and let alone in the correction space. And I've seen a lot of different spaces. I always say now, I can say from Wall Street to death row, right? We've seen everything in between. And you're right. We've talked about this several times, but there's an external environment, right? The people that you serve, and then there's the internal environment, and that's who you work with every day to make sure the external environment is doing what you want it to do as an organization, publicly or privately. And if we get the internal environment right, it really makes it easier. Nothing's easy, but it makes it easier to impact the external environment. And that's where, I think we worked well together, and I'm glad that, I elevated kind of that mindset. But what were some of those things as you began to journey down that path and kind of start from Missouri? Because Missouri was really your biggest challenge. Not only was it the department that you were working in, and we don't have to necessarily go into a lot of detail, but it was also the factors around you that were, even though the governor brought you here, I think there were some headwinds that you faced trying to do the things you wanted to do in that department. Is that fair to say? So kind of talk to us about that.
Yeah, it was really interesting because right away I was getting emails from employees that were saying things about their work environment, the people they worked with, their supervisors, their leaders. And I had never in my life seen a more disgruntled, unhappy workforce. And this is 11,000 people. And I was getting hundreds of emails. And immediately my heart began to hurt for these people. Because why would you stay in a job when you're that miserable? Why do you continue to come to work? And it just became the fire in my belly that surely there's got to be something better. We can do something better for these people. And when you think about if we can get them in a better place, imagine how much better they can help the population that corrections is already expected to push out in a better way than we got them. So the staff was the biggest. The legislature had no confidence in the Department of Corrections, and that came across clearly in all of our legislative hearings. But they were very open and were willing to give me a chance, and I appreciated that. The public, the prior employees that came to me and told me what I was dealing with and that I would never be able to change anything. It was just a lost cause. And then even certain public figures that that were brought in to assist in the governor's office were just didn't believe it could be done and had their own style of managing, which was very different than my style of managing. And so that in and of itself proved to be headwinds, as you call it.
Well, that's going back to kind of my intro. I mean, I was with you on that journey, and it would have been easy to potentially maybe just fold, right? And maybe just give in, but you never did. Which I want to get to in just a second, but let me back up. So you walked into something, 11,000 employees, a very disgruntled workforce, a history of no change. Where did you start? Like, how did you even say, okay, I talk about that, like, what's the first domino? Where did you even go, this is so daunting to me. How the hell did you even sit down and go, okay, here's where I need to start? Walk us through that thought process.
I think, they say the Lord watches over drunks and fools. And in this case, I mean, my plan immediately became about the staff. And then there were all these other outside factors that still had to be done. There had to be a budget. I had an executive team that I had to figure out. I had an amazing executive assistant who really helped guide me. But the very first thing I had to do was find a deputy. I had to find somebody who I trusted that could ride alongside with me, and that was Matt. And I found him in relatively short time. And in my first 30 days, I really spent a lot of time just making notes of what people were saying, what was wrong, what was broken, what did I need to learn more about. You remember all those sticky notes. I had them everywhere, but I didn't know what to tackle first. And so I just had to get my feet under me. And then Matt had such a wealth of knowledge about the Missouri Department of Corrections that I could really lean on him. And so we became what I always say, we complemented each other's strengths and covered each other's weaknesses. Because what he was strong in, I was not. And what I was capable of was not his specialty. So we really made a good team.
I think that is a good point that people miss sometimes. You don't always have it figured out. Like, people wait to have a game plan, and I'm not anti-strategy or anything like that. I think you should have a strategy, but some people wait until everything's perfect. If you would have waited, you would still be waiting, right? You would have never gotten started. And I think sometimes just taking action, it might not be the best action, and you might learn from that, but just having that and doing it, you learn by going and doing. You can't wait for everything to be perfect, because it's never going to be perfect. And those are just excuses. And what you found is, if you wanted to find an excuse, you certainly could in the environment that you were facing. You could have had all the excuses in the world and justified everything, or you could have that will to win, or that comfortable enough to say, I don't know exactly how this is going to play out, but I'm confident enough that we'll get through it. That type of mentality and just getting started, that's where I think allowed you to have some quick wins, but also learn your people. You completely kind of overturned the board, if you will, in some of your leadership and things like that. But that didn't happen by you analyzing. That happened by you doing. Is that fair to say?
Most definitely. And just looking back right now, I'm thinking about all those notes. I had notepads with just all of these topics and questions and things to do. And I remember at some point I said, okay, we have got to have a plan. We have got to have a plan about what we're going to tackle, how we're going to do it, who's going to do it, when are we going to do it, because certain things had to happen before something else could happen. And at the core of it were the employees of the department. So we were able to build a strategic plan, and luckily we were ahead of what former Governor Greitens wanted. He brought in some folks to help every department develop a strategic plan. We were already down the road, because I have to have organization in order to be able to get things done and see things being done. And you have to have that before you can even begin to think about changing the people that are doing the job. Because through that process, we found people that could be a part of the process, and we found people that just weren't ready to be part of this process. And so we started to make change there too.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that's important. But the plan came from not sitting there and the plan really came from you experiencing it, the sticky notes, understanding it, getting your bearings, and the plan, it didn't organically just show up, but it allowed it to show up because you were in a good place to create that plan. That's number one. The second thing, and you've said this 3 times now, I think, is that it came back to the people. Like everything, it came back to the people. We'll figure everything else out, but if we can get this people piece, and that's the other thing that was so valuable in your plan, which again, I think a lot of organizations miss the boat. Even when I talk about organizations, that could be large organizations or small teams or departments, is that they have a strategy and then people live on the outside of it, right? Like they have this strategy of what they want to accomplish. And then, oh yeah, over here, we'll do people development, leadership development, all this stuff. Yours was integrated in, yours was blended in. It was one of your pillars that really was a part of the puzzle. It wasn't like a side dish. And how valuable do you think that is or was in your journey?
I think that was the foundation. And what I've realized over my, I'd say really the last 5 years about talking about the Missouri journey and what we did. So this would have been even when I was still in Missouri. But what I've learned is the majority of leaders give it lip service. They talk about it. They think they're doing it, but I don't think they really understand what it means to make change that affects their frontline staff and what that really, really means. And again, I didn't know what that really, really meant until you became part of our journey. And I was right there in those training sessions with our staff, experiencing it with them and processing and learning about them and talking with them. And it just was such a game changer for me personally, but it also, the more people told me we couldn't do this, the more I aligned with my frontline people, and I was like, oh, hell yeah, we can do this.
Yeah. Yeah, and see, that's the other thing is that I don't think, and again, this is not a knock on a lot of top leaders, but it's just not taught. That aspect is not taught, how to be an executive. And it's one of the most, again, I'm biased, but it's one of the most vital pieces to the puzzle, in my opinion, that helps set you up for success. I mean, there was a recent study done about CEOs that, like 33% of them are asked to leave within the first 15 months. 60% of them admit sometimes they make it up as they go. Like there's no real, I mean, there's Wharton's College of Business and all this other, executive things that you can take, but there's nothing that really helps people connect those dots. Some people, it's just that it factor. We've talked about that, and you really embraced it, and you didn't delegate it, which is another thing. There's a difference between supporting culture and driving culture. It's hard to really, if it doesn't matter at the top, it's not going to matter. It's not going to stick. You really not only supported it, you drove it, and you were there the whole way. Why? Was that just part of your DNA, or did you understand the value of you being present?
I think some of it had to do with, yes, I understood the value of being the role model, the leader. Where I think I'm different from a lot of other CEOs or leaders is I believe that my role as a leader was to demonstrate and be with the people and to trust my immediate team to do the job that we had all discussed, that we had talked about, and when they needed me, I would be there. But otherwise, I needed them to be able to carry out the mission that we had already talked about. So what I'm saying is I didn't need to be in all the high-level meetings that my team was in, the executive team. I needed to spend my time being out and about, in probation parole offices, in prisons, in the transition centers, in the community, talking and listening to people and hearing what they're saying, and then bring that information back and let's fix what's wrong. Let's address what's being said. Let's understand what this means. That, along with all the big priorities we were doing, those little things were just as important as achieving the budget or closing a facility. You can never, ever underestimate the little things that staff need and put them in a lesser role than the big ticket items. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You didn't give it a weight. Everything was important. Those little things made big differences, and you realize that, right? So, and Matt, you and I have talked about this several times, but if we can do this in a prison with no air conditioning, with all the factors that your employees and your staff worked in, we can do this anywhere. Missouri was real. I always say on a scale from 0 to 10, Missouri was starting at a -5. Like it was something. You know this. I mean, we met as a team for 2 days in Dallas and said, do we even want to can we even believe we could make a difference? And the team was like 50-50. Like, Charlie raised his hand and he had no belief in it. Like, he had no belief in the beginning that he could make a difference. And this is a guy who's very grounded in faith and believes he can probably do anything. It was interesting. Because I'm sure along the way, there's a couple things that I want you to kind of get into. One is, what are some of those tactical things that you did along the way with people that you believe led to success? The second piece, which we can get into in just a minute, is how did you stay the course? Because it would have been easy just to throw in the towel several times, right? Like, this isn't working, or did you see wins along the way that you saw, like these glimmers of hope? Like, we are seeing progress in those results. But let's kind of start with, Anne's top 3 to 5 things that if somebody's going to go down this journey, what are some of the things that are must-haves with the people that are anchors that will lead you to that sustainment that we talk about?
So the first thing I'm thinking about was, one, I didn't grow up working in the prison system. I worked in the community. So to me, the things that I saw wrong or that needed to be fixed in prison were a no-brainer. Whereas maybe someone who grew up working in prisons thought, well, hell, I worked like that. What's the big deal?
Right.
So I can give you an example. I went to a facility on a Sunday, and it was cold. And I walked around, and the gentleman walking me around kept talking about how this institution used to be the flagship in Missouri. And it was probably in the bottom of the barrel when I was there. And we went to one of those little outposts, and it had 4 heaters, and only one of them was working. And I remember saying, how cold is it in here? I mean, it was like 30-some degrees. And I thought, this person is sitting out here for hours and hours, and they have a quarter of their heater working. I made a note. We went back, and I told them right away. I said, that needs to be fixed immediately. Seeing people's desks on cinder blocks, a chair with a broken wheel, it sounds so simple, but those are the little things that people weren't paying attention to, but they mean the world to somebody who's got to sit there for 8 or 12 hours a day. So being from outside the prison, that was a big win. So when the email started to turn from being nasty, ugly, negative to thank you for being here, thank you for fixing the heater, thank you for whatever, those wins became huge to me. And as much as people kept saying, you can't do this, to see the negative leaders and negative veteran staff retire and giving us the ability to promote the right people and getting thank yous from the field for promoting the right people, those little wins, it all just kind of kept fueling that we're making a difference. We're making a difference. And it's kind of like when I clean my house and I've cleaned a closet or a cabinet, nobody else can really see it, but I know it's been done. That's the way I felt we were working in corrections. And when I knew we were starting to turn the corner was when different legislators would tell me, I don't hear anything from my constituents anymore. In fact, they're happy. Things are getting better. That was huge. So I'm an eternal optimist, so I'm always looking for good signs to show, and we were getting those along the way. And
well, there's something in there that I think is a nugget that people need to take away, and that is, pay attention to the small things, right? Like, pay attention. Like, it's easy with 11,000 people to say, hey, we have to do these large, big initiatives and create all this change. But it's those little wins along the way that make big differences. Even if it's to one person, it makes a big difference. And those little wins add up to big wins and create that momentum or those tailwinds that we always talk about that allows you to potentially step into larger things. And I think a lot of leaders miss that. A lot of leaders try to create this big change or have this grandiose plans. And sometimes it's the heater. It's the desk chair. It's the, it's the light bulb. It's little things that make big differences to those people because those people talk, right? And that's one of the things that you began to see. Like, they talk shit or they talk good.
Right.
And most of the time, not all the time, most of the time, people will give credit where credit's due. Even if they don't, like, they might say, listen, I don't know what she thinks she can do with 11,000 people, but she fixed my heater, right?
Yep.
Or she fixed my desk. And those things spread. And all of a sudden, you kind of create that momentum over time. And so that's a big one that I want to make sure that people don't miss, is that sometimes it's the little things in the beginning that create the big momentum. Fair to say?
The other thing we found, Chad, is that based on the way some of the emails were written, that individual was screaming to be heard. And I'm talking about, these are bad emails.
Yeah.
And so I would give them to Debbie and say, have this person come up here and let me sit down and let's talk. And people would come to my office and they would have no clue why they were there. But I would spend an hour with them, and I would usually have the division director in there with me because I wanted to role model for the division director why it's important to pay attention. So we would talk about the email because that's what brought them there. But then we would start to dive into or peel back the layers about, okay, what's really going on here? By the time probably 95% of the people left my office, they felt so much better and they were ready. And I think that I built some trust there. But people just wanted to be heard.
Yeah.
And to have those kind of kahunas to send that kind of email to your top leader that you don't even know, I felt like they were begging to be heard.
Yeah.
And that was, I learned a lot about their personal challenges. And then you lay that on top of working inside a challenging situation of prisons. I mean, those people carry a lot around with them.
Well, I mean, but again, they number one, yes, they had, big kahunas to do that, but they've never been allowed a voice, right? And you allowed them a voice. And again, those are the things that I think sometimes we miss at the top. Like, people, they say they care about people, but are they willing to sit down an hour with a frontline staff member and have a discussion, or a mid-level manager and are they willing to do that stuff? Or do they think there's time spent other ways? Those things that you did, and we could talk for hours on this thing, but those things that you did all added up to those big wins. And you took the department from last to first, right? Like, we had a mission of impacting retention and reducing, some of the lawsuits that came your way, and impacting, reducing call outs and minimizing overtime. And we had that scoreboard from the very beginning. And those things and there's a lot more into this, but those little things impacted that scoreboard at the end of the day. So talk to us about And then I do want to get back to how you kind of stood the course, but talk to us about the successes. So now fast forward 7-8 years of the journey that we were in. What took place that really changed that department? Tell us about some of the metrics in the indicators that now are still present, even though that you're gone.
So Missouri did a statewide survey for all state employees, 45,000 state employees at the time. And Department of Corrections, when we initially completed the survey, had a 75% participation rate. So 8,000 out of 11,000 employees participated. And our results were horrifying. They were so bad. We had like a 3% motivation out of 100. 3% of people were motivated to come to work. So we knew we had nowhere to go but up. But by the time Matt and I stepped down and Matt and his wife retired from Missouri DOC, we had prisons that were in the 80th percentile for people who agreed, strongly agreed or agreed that leadership was good. They knew the direction the department was headed in. They felt staff were held accountable in fair ways. They felt valued and heard. I mean, it was, and this was still a time when staffing was difficult. So, like you mentioned, unair conditioned work locations, large amounts of overtime, and yet prisons were still scoring in the 80th and 90th percentile for people who agreed things were in a good place. That is amazing when you look at other state employees who were not as high and they worked 8 to 5 in air-conditioned offices.
Yeah.
So we did focus on reducing call-ins because, you know, if people would quit calling in, people could go home at the end of their shift. But you had to break it down and help employees understand what's in it for you. And just really started to see a lot of good wins. We were building a bench so that now we had succession planning happening so that when people got promoted to somewhere else, we had others waiting in the wings that would be good candidates for promotion as well. There was no bench when I got there. There were current leaders, and that was it.
Yeah, the other thing that comes to mind as you're talking about this is you really created clarity on where your vision for the department. And you were also in, I always say that, I talk about you behind your back, but I always say that you were also in a good spot because you came to Missouri and basically with good faith said, I'm going to do what I think is right for this department. And if anybody ever thinks that it's not right, I'll just pack my ass and go back to North Carolina, right? Like you weren't trying to score political points. You weren't, and not that you were trying to buck the curve, but you just were trying to do what's right. You tried to do what you knew what was right, and then you created and you communicated that vision. I think you and Matt went on a tour of talking to everybody about what you're trying to accomplish, and you also gave leaders the opportunity to either get on the bus or don't get on the bus. It doesn't matter. You're either on it or you're not. And if you're not, no harm, no foul. We're going to replace you with other people. You also created an internal team, new FTEs. You created brand new FTEs on a state budget, by the way, right? Like, it's not like you had all these piles of money, which I think that was another thing is that a lot of times, not knocking any other state departments, but a lot of times like, well, that's just not in our budget. We don't have the budget. We can't do this. You and Matt found a way to leverage the dollars that you had or go finding net new dollars to do the things you needed to do, maybe not just on the people side, but for the department that was right for the department that allowed you to move in the direction you wanted to move. Did you get any pushback to that? Was that an easy process? Kind of walk through that because I've never really kind of got behind the curtain on that one.
You know, Matt, I'll give him full credit. He is the mastermind when it came to money. But he knew that this was an investment we needed to make in our staff. And we told them that. And initially, to begin to pay for the efforts, we couldn't ask for any money. But Matt was creative enough to know that we could hold off on doing some things and we could pull money from each of the divisions, because this was an entire department. It wasn't just for prisons or a certain level of manager. This was for the entire department, and every division had ownership in it. And when they had to cough up money, that too showed that they had ownership in making this be successful. And then we had to be able to explain it to the legislature, explain it to staff, explain it to the governor's office. But that kind of thing is really important. When we made the first initial investment, then it makes it easier to go back and begin to ask for money. But we took it on the chin initially so that we could say, look at the efforts that we've made happen ourselves. Now I need some additional help.
Yeah. And there were other departments that were pissed because corrections always got everything at the end, right? Like, oh, corrections asked for it, they get it in their budget. So it's interesting. But again, you built a totality of relationships that allowed you to work together internally and externally to, drive the vision that you wanted to drive. I know we're kind of coming down for a landing here. And again, I could talk to you for hours. We could talk for hours, but for sake of time. So kind of bring it to a summation. So you have somebody who wants to enact change or wants to enact transformation. Because you always say, we took this from you, but change is something that you do and you can revert back. Transformation is something that creates a brand new path and you're not looking backwards. Kind of create a summation. Somebody wants, whether they're a mid-level manager or somebody running 11,000 people, what would be kind of the advice that you would give them if you could sit down with them for 90 seconds? What would you say that would hopefully give them the hope that this is possible?
First thing I would tell them is go talk to your staff. Go talk to the people. Go talk to the janitor. Go talk to the people in food service. Go talk to the secretary. Go talk to frontline people and be genuine and open to what they're saying. Don't defend it, but listen. Just listen and ask questions about them. People want to talk about themselves. So I would say do that. While the leader is doing that, it empowers the people around them to be able to do the job they were hired to do. And they're not being micromanaged. And they, in turn, will appreciate that as well. The other thing is take action. Start fixing stuff. It's not complicated. Don't save your money for one big thing. Little bits can be chipped away and spent to fix this, that, and whatever. And as you think about your staff, think about what they need. Not just what they're saying, but think about the role they're in and how can you help make their life better. Because not everybody shows up behind that smile with the smile in their head. And that's where you got to give people, the more you can take care of your people, the better your people will take care of you.
I think that's huge. That's huge. A couple more minutes. I got one more topic that just I have to touch on. So you went from kind of the public avenue of work. You were in government for 30 years, however plus years you were in it. Now you're running your own consulting firm, Precythe Advisory Group. You're working with multiple different businesses and connecting, and now you're on the other side. You're kind of outside the bottle. How has that transition been just for you personally? I mean, tell me how you're doing, and just because we talked, actually we had a call yesterday, I think. You have to see things differently, right? You have to kind of operate differently. You have to kind of look at it through a different lens. Talk to us about that. How has that been for you?
So 37 years as a state employee, it took me 10 months to wipe the state employee off of me and realize I didn't need to just sit in my office and be ready to work. I miss the role of director every day.
Okay.
I miss it every day. But I love the flexibility. I love connecting dots. When I hear that there's somebody who's got a great product and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this lane in corrections would benefit from this product tremendously. I love making those connections. I love hearing about nonprofits that have a really great message that could be beneficial to the corrections industry. I'm still a dot connector. That's me at my core. So I love it. I love staying current with what's going on because I don't ever want to become irrelevant to the world of corrections. I just believe in it too much, and I want to be able to tell the general public what's going on today and how great it is.
That's awesome. Well, I'm blessed to have you in my network and call you a friend. I tell people, I don't know if I ever told you this. I say, Anne is like the Taylor Swift of the corrections. She's very popular. A lot of people want to know what she's done. I mean, you've had multiple states ask you what the hell you've done, how you did it in Missouri. You've had the federal level ask you how the hell you did it in Missouri. And so I think that just is a testament to what you really did when what you came into. And I couldn't be more proud to call you a friend and a colleague. And I'm looking forward to what else, what other awesome stuff we can make happen, as long as our journey continues. So, and I appreciate you. Yeah, I appreciate you being a guest. There's several takeaways, and if an audience, whoever's listening to this, if you can just get one takeaway that allows you to be more successful and set you up for success, I think it was worth your time to listen to this. So, Anne, until next time, and I'm sure there'll be another time that we'll have another conversation. But until next time, appreciate it. Thanks for being on, and we'll catch you on the other side.
Thank you.
See ya.